And then I think one of my final questions too was, so I know you've been working in the field for a long time, and I think on YouTube I saw some videos where you talked about your personal drive, um, like um, your kind of like your drive to go into the lab every day and to work hard on viruses. And I know now during COVID, obviously now it's like a heat, like now, um, like obviously like it's like the motivation to work is clearly there because there's a pandemic. But what would be your advice to younger people trying to get into not just the field, not just like getting into a virus research, but other fields of research when their expertise is not needed as like as much as like yours is now, for example?
Well, you'll never know whether your expertise will be needed to much of an extent, but it's uh, it's certainly never why anyone goes into a research or academic type of position. There's ultimately for most of the academics or researchers that I've encountered, the one thing driving them is this passionate, obsessive need to understand this one tiny thing more than anything else. And then the motivation might be different for others, and it also depends on what field you are in. But the drive, for whatever reason, is that this little thing seems to be the one thing you are really naturally good at feeling out and understanding. And for me, for a long time, I didn't see myself doing basic research in molecular virology because I didn't quite find the niche that fit with me until I started studying viruses as these kind of dynamic populations. And then suddenly I felt this is the one thing where it feels so natural to me that I don't have to think very hard to try to even see it in my head, what I'm trying to study. And if someone is lucky enough to find that, then that's where you just focus your whole concentration. And then who knows, it might or it may never be so relevant that the rest of the world pays attention to you. But it's essential
Right.
that in the world we keep funding all of these people focused on these tiny things, because sometimes one out of every 7,000 of them we might need for a specific problem, right? So that's been my case. And then again, I may have, maybe it's the interviews I spoke with before, but for me, it was the motivation ultimately for specifically studying viruses has been because I was so traumatically affected by the HIV epidemic that was coming out in the 80s. And I was still an impressionable child when I was seeing it on TV. But it really scared me, and it really kind of imprinted and stuck there. That I just remember seeing, I don't understand what that is, but it seems to be killing a lot of people and no one wants to help them. I remember seeing that. And just that unfairness, I just thought if ever I could figure out how to fight that disease, I want to do it. And that stuck with me. So for me, I've always needed or hoped that whatever I was studying in virology had some sort of relevance to helping people, even though ultimately I'm in a very fundamental research where anything I do won't be a vaccine in the near future.
Yeah, and I think actually there's probably a lot of youth now that have lived through this year-long pandemic and are inspired to help the world fight other viruses and go into biology and like other like fields like that.
I think so. Because it's in during this pandemic is when I remembered, or when I realized that actually it was ultimately the last major, the HIV pandemic that somehow got me to remember or notice viruses, right? And probably at a time when children are just trying to make out what they want to do, or what would be fun to study, right? It wasn't until years later that eventually I came back to virology, but it was the little footprint was there. And I think this pandemic, there are a lot of kids that have been affected for the first time, having to explain to them
Yeah.
to wear a mask and etc. So I'm hopeful that maybe we'll have a lot of great virologists in the next 20 years come out.